Well, greetings and salutations, test takers. The Series 7 Guru coming to you from my off-grid studio, getting our kicks here on Route 66. We do this every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Arizona time. Share with any test takers you may know. We start by getting some housekeeping done, and then we help you with any content from any FINRA or NASA exam, and try and get some fun and fellowship in along the way as well. So if you do have a question, please let us know, or just check in with us what series exam you are taking, where you're joining us from. See the group. I think the furthest we've had is somebody joining us from India. So who knows? Maybe we'll have somebody joining us from South America or Australasia. That's a test question. I'm joking, but you should know that IFA is the benchmark for international investing. If you do have a question content-wise, just tell me what exam you're taking, SIE Series 7, followed by a capital Q in your question. That helps me because there's a lot of content that overlaps, and how it gets tested on one exam and how it gets tested on another exam could be different. So that's helpful in terms of knowing what depth I got to go to answer your question. If you're looking for a free supplement to your paid study materials, no surprise, I recommend my channel. Okay, hold on. I don't know if I can do this on the fly. Let's see if I can. There we go. Our wingman, Brian, the test geek himself, I think, is trying to join us. So let's see if we can get him an invite. Get him on here with us. Boom. Okay, so that we'll see how that works. I think I got him done there. And I probably should get rid of my second camera. Probably should get rid of my banner so we can actually fit Brian on the screen if and when he shows up. And let me get just one more time. Invite. Boom. 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 Okay, there we go. All right, back to getting our housekeeping done. Now, there he is. Hey, Brian.
Did I get you in time?
Yeah, you got me in time. I let you in on the fly, which I'm always very easy to impress myself. But I was impressed with myself. I was able to do that on the fly with you. We're just doing our normal housekeeping before we get on to asking them about other things. So that's the best free supplement. My channel is organized as a buffet. Take what you like, leave what you don't. The best way to proceed is go to your series playlist, find your series. If you're taking 65 or 66, for example, it starts with a podcast series Brian and I did on those exams. That's usually followed by another playlist of lectures and then a playlist of practice tests and questions. That's the best way to proceed if you're laying base knowledge. If you're looking for a particular topic, please use the channel search bar. I don't mind helping you with questions. If you have help, you want help, send me an explication request at guruexamprep.com. But it is a little frustrating sometimes when the exact same question has been asked and answered several times in video format on the channel. So put in there accretion or whatever, margin, and all the content available will come up. Now, if you're looking for a paid supplement, I think the best paid supplement is Kaplan Q Bank. If you don't have a Kaplan Q Bank already, you can get a 15% discount on a Kaplan Q Bank with a performance tracker at checkout. Put in Guru 15. For Series 7, for example, that's $55.80 for 3,600 questions and a performance tracker. You can combine that until Brian comes up with his own Q Bank to sell with Brian's Test Geek materials. He is the best at distilling this information. He's been kind enough to give our viewers a 20% discount on his content. So if you want all his videos, his PDF, his practice exam, all in with that discount, comes in about $100, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood. In terms of my classes, I'm teaching a Guru Exam Prep. That's me. Kaplan Collaboration Class, Series 7, February 18th through 20th. I usually do a collaboration with Kaplan once a month. Okay, we have on our booking page, we have a weekly Q&A jam session. That's tomorrow. You're welcome to join us. If you want to join us for that, you go to deantenneytutoring.setmore.com. You go to classes. That's a free session that you can join us for. It's a little different than this because we actually have a whiteboard and we can bring up QBank questions, things like that. You would go to that same place. You want to join us tomorrow. Tomorrow we're doing our book club, our monthly book club meeting, and we're going over she-wolves. It's about legendary ladies in the securities industry. Legends like Muriel Siebert, and the story behind her buying her first chair, and how the New York Stock Exchange didn't have a rule against women. They just wouldn't vote them in. So I think it's a lot of fun. I'm going to do that once a month. Same thing. You can join us for the monthly book club at the booking page, deantenneytutoring.setmore.com. I try and pick books that are relevant to the securities industry. Not always possible, but that's kind of the idea. We have a Facebook community called Baby Brokers Doing Hat Tricks. Baby broker is a term of endearment for rookies in the securities industry. A hat trick is 3 successes in a row. So the idea here is if you're working on your SIE 766 or SIE 663, whatever the case may be. I know sometimes people join this community and they got to go past the 3. They got to do 4 or 5 exams. We have Reddit communities. Our Reddit communities for Series 6 is subreddit is R Series 6. For the SIE and Series 7, R Series 7. For 63, 65, 66, NASA exams are 66. And for 9, 10s, and 24s are Series 24. We did get a question, and Brian and I cover this in our podcast episode about digital assets on NASA exams. My feeling is that when they do start to ask on this, it's the major controversy right now. It looks like the controversy may change as the administration changes. But both state administrators and the SEC has said they think some of these digital assets are not commodities. They're not mediums of exchange. They're unregistered securities because of the Howey decision, right? You're trading this asset at a third party to make you some money. And I think if they were going to ask about digital assets, it would be in that context. If it's deemed to be a security, remember the state administrator and the SEC are the ones who decide whether something is a security. And you can litigate, and the crypto professionals, crypto men and women have certainly been litigating this with the SEC. I think, there's, I think what today was Larry Ellison, the guy from ChatGPT, and the president talking about a new crypto AI, I guess an AI infrastructure program. Anyways, that would be my guess on that. All right, let's get busy here. Let's get busy going over stuff that people would like to talk about. We've got Ryan, 65 from Atlanta. I like that, man. That's a good picture there, Ryan. I like it. You got that little, what do you call it, a bouquet there? I love it.
Boutonniere.
Boutonniere. Well, there, I should have known that Brian, the classy guy, would know the right term. Series 9 from Utah, Paula. I don't know, Paul, if it was yourself, you've done the 10 yet, but I had somebody on social media, Brian, ask me whether I thought the 9 or 10 was a bigger deal. I certainly think it's the 10. I think the 10 is much more of a slog than the 9. Paula, we always comment on this when people join us with 9s or 10s. Don't get too bogged down on option strategies and the minutia of those strategies. Stay focused on sales supervision as it relates to your 9. Not talking about test prep vendors. I'm not about the actual exam. So, but that's something Brian and I always tell folks. 63. All right. Looking to get revenge on my 66 miss. I like it, Brandon. And then remember, you're 63. If you take a 65, it's the equivalent of a 66. So I like the attitude. Get revenge on that NASA exam. Love it. Series 7 from Buffalo. Woo! I taught many a class up in Buffalo, and boy, that lake effect snow. I guess it builds character. What again? Congratulations to your Buffalo Bills, Michaela. Now they go down to Kansas City. And I guess everybody's upset, Brian, that, Pat Mahomes, I think he's earned his status to get called on. But, there was a couple calls where they were roughing the passer and they didn't really hit him. So I think sometimes they bait. I think Mahomes baits people into hitting him. Studying hard. Love it. Love it. Hi, Dean. 1 week late for my 65 with Brian supping all your videos in the playlist. Like, I'm ready to get to pee. I like it. Yasha, I think so too. We'd like to know what your scores are. 1 week out, you should have a practice test score, and I'd be interested if you want to share that with us, what that practice score is. If you don't have a practice test score, I highly recommend you get one right away because, we need to know where you're at. Failed Series 7, second time, Diana, that hurts. I will link to a video podcast episode I have called You Failed. Is it over? But spoiler alert, the answer is no. You're getting a third shot. Now, I know Brian says that, and I agree with him, and I'll get his thoughts on it. I'm paraphrasing, so maybe Brian will say it a different way. We don't believe when you get 2 fails, particularly if you were in the high 60s on those fails, that it's a knowledge deficit problem. We think it's some other thing, some other variable. I think in Brian's case, don't you think, Brian, it could be test taking technique? Is that what sometimes you think it is?
Boy, I spend a lot of time with folks talking about how to take these things. I've made a lot of videos as well about learning how to take a linear exam, A plus B equals C. And people don't often apply linear solutions. That's where the overthinking and overanalysis comes in. Oftentimes, why people miss the mark by a couple, 3 points.
Do you have, Brian, the title of that video? Is it in your free content on YouTube?
In my introductions to almost every course, I go over, the 3 pillars and
so,
and
Brian Diana does have some free content on his YouTube channel. So you want to check that out. I'll link to my video. We get asked all the time on my version of his linear thing is, what if they meant they don't? People who are bringing in stuff into questions that isn't there. It's, if it isn't there, don't bring it into the question, and don't overthink it. The other thing you could be doing is overthinking and using your own brain to outsmart yourself. We certainly don't want to do that. And we don't want to be changing answers. So what we're looking for, Diana, is what you did this for two times, what we can tweak on that third shot. I don't think, and I think Brian doesn't think, it's a knowledge deficit problem. Now, we're not saying that you shouldn't be studying for your third attempt. We're just saying you really want to kind of do some diagnostics with yourself, kind of do an intellectual inventory with yourself and say, okay, what can I do to kind of change it up to get these points I need, right? Right on. Let's go. I like your avatar. There's a crypto guy for sure. Woo. Yeah, Brian.
One other thing was she's been using past perfect. It's time to get a Kaplan Q bank. Yep.
Diana, yeah, past perfect really gets into the weeds, really obtuse. And I would like to know your Q bank usage rate, but I'm with Brian. Whether it's Brian's supplement or a Kaplan Q bank or both, if you have the resources, but you want to get some different questions. And so I would highly recommend getting that Kaplan Q bank, $55.80, 3,600 plus questions with a performance tracker. And then you can confirm whether it's past perfect is taking you in the weeds or it's a testable issue, right? If Brian talks about it, Dean talks about it, past perfect talks about it, Kaplan talks about it, it's testable. Past perfect has a question, you go, man, I never seen that before. Guess B, assign to the universe, move on. So there are people, I do think, would you go as far to say this, Brian, that past perfect sometimes does contribute to people missing their mark?
Yes.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, for the vast, they're a good vendor. And, I'm sure that, if they were here to push back, they'd say, pushing people, giving them too much is better than not giving enough. We're trying to stretch their mind and hope it doesn't go back to the same spot. But I think, sometimes they're not stretching people's minds. They're getting people into quicksand with no way to get out of the quicksand. So I'm with Brian. Let's go. Ooh. There you go. I like it. I got to check that out. I've been scoring 85% on my practice exams. That's wonderful. You take the SIE in 5 days. Love it. I've been studying what I don't know. Love it. My question to you is, what do I do the last 5 days? Been doing a lot of QBank. I would say rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat, and then try to make sure you're not getting those 85s. I mean, that's wonderful. I'll take it. But try and make sure you're not getting that because you've memorized questions and answers. Other than that, that would be the only red flag I would see here. And pace yourself. You don't want to burn out before you can stick the landing 5 days out. So with a score like that, you've earned the right, if you need to, just kind of slow down a little bit, pace yourself. And like I said, just make sure you're not memorizing questions and answers. Your thought, Brian?
Don't forget to take FINRA's practice exam.
Excellent. Right on, TJ. So FINRA on their website It loses its diagnostic capability after you've done it once. Somebody told me they got 100, and I said, I don't believe you. And they say, are you calling me a liar? And I said, I am, right? Because there's no way you're going to get 100 on that unless you've done it 3 or 4 times. But the first time you see it, I think it's a good mark. I think it's a good mark. So if you can do that, maybe if I were you and you haven't done it yet, TJ, I would save that like 2 days out. If you're testing like on a Friday, maybe do that Wednesday afternoon to kind of get your last mark on where you're at. So yeah, Brian is right, man. It would be a sin for any SIE test taker to test without having done the FINRA SIE exam. I like it later in your studies. Now, sometimes it's too late, but somewhere along the way, right? I like to use it as a mark. You know, if you buy Brian's supplement, those 2 good marks, you got a Brian practice test with a mark, you got a FINRA for another mark, and then you got whoever your test prep vendors practice finals are for marks. And what we're trying to get on those marks is kind of do an intellectual inventory, see where we're at, so we know whether we're at risk or not, right? We don't want to go down there and not know whether we think we're going to make our mark or not.
I want to repeat what you just said, Dean, because it's very important. You really don't want to take the same exam 3 times. All you're doing is memorizing the question. A diagnostic test is good 1 time and 1 time only. Move on to other practice finals.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why the Kaplan Q Bank we recommend it, because it's harder for you to use up all those questions. STC, very rarely, TJ. So, you know, I feel like we're kind of sending out negative waves here, but the only time, TJ, I have seen somebody with your score not pass, very rarely. So I said, everything looks good. I think you're going to stick the landing. The only time that's not the case is when Brian brings this up. Somebody tells us they're getting an 85 or 90, and whether it's because they've memorized the question or they've done it more than once, it's lost that predictive ability, right? And so I'm with Brian on that. So, you know, make sure you do that. I have a SIE practice test. I have a series. I have tests I've written, TJ. My tests are not diagnostic. My own content is just to share with you things people encounter on the test, not to tell you whether you're going to go down there. So every once in a while, Brian gets away. Dean, I just did your test and I got an 85. I go, well, don't take my test and think an 85, because my test isn't diagnostic. It's just my way of sharing things that people tell me they've encountered. That's all my exams are about. Well, I'm with you. FINRA doesn't write good prose. So if you've been listening to the publications, it was like paint drying. Well, there you go. Sometimes they put on little seminars and they have like little podcasts, and maybe that's a better way to go. I asked that question, but I'm studying for the 9 and we'll do the 10 in a couple months. Well, that's great. Right on, Paula. You know, sales supervisor coming down the pike here. Get the 9, the 10. Love it. There you go. It's still not regulated. Yeah, I'm with you. With you. Well, good news if you're in that space. Gary Gensler is gone, right? And apparently the guy who's the new SEC chairman is crypto friendly, and I think the president's pretty crypto friendly. So I believe to pass, you need to overprime the muscle. Overpry. Ryan, I think the way I say it is, you don't want to barely pass. And, you know, you want to be able to take down any draw. What I mean by that is, you know, the draws that you get on your exams are random. So when I say it's a face of death draw or a dream draw, that's really not true, because the draws are random. You know, that's part of FINRA understands that too. And that's why they use this thing called equating. But I'm a big believer, Ryan, particularly those taking your SIE, all these exams, particularly SIE, you want to overlearn. You want to be operating from abundance so that you have whatever draw you encounter, you can take it down. And the other thing that about overlearning that I think is really great is because then any one question isn't going to be material to your success in making your mark. Whereas if you're wobbly, you know, and you change an answer and then you miss by 1, you go, oh man, what was it? Was it that one? That's not where I want you to be. I want you to be operating from abundance and say, you know what? I got this thing. You know, I guess I'm going to guess B on this one. I'm going to assign it to the universe. I'm going to make it up elsewhere. Right. You know, that's the kind of position I'd want you to be. So I totally believe in over learning. Other thing I would add, Ryan, make sure you pay attention to the weighting on the exam so that you're not over learning something that only gives you 2 points. right? So here's an example, right? If you're taking a 7, you could commit a sin by overlearning margin. You could spend hours on margin. We just had somebody from Past Perfect. My God, Past Perfect's margin has questions you're never going to encounter on the exam. And that would be a waste of your 10 hours or 15 hours you would be spending there. Brian, your thoughts on overlearning?
Yeah,
Overtrain.
absolutely. You and I don't think we've ever gotten a 72% on one of these exams. But again, it's hard to know what is overlearning and what is underlearning. We're trying to get the highest evaluations possible before we go into the test. We're trying to work on our weak areas. It's what the performance tracker is for, right? Always work on those weak areas. Try to get the best score. Don't over analyze, over study. Two different
I love
things.
it. I love it. I love it. Good point. Struggle to remember who does what. Well, I would say, Paul, that you definitely need to know that on the 9, you are not a Series 4. You're not a registered option principal. So, you can't approve advertising, for example. You are making a preliminary approval, not a final approval on the option account. Yeah, I do think, well, it's going to be context. And, branch office manager is 910. Registered option principal is not a branch manager. That's a person that does other things. So yeah, I think it's testable, but I don't think, if you tell me that you missed the mark because you couldn't remember the difference between a ROP and a branch office manager, I think that's going to cost you a couple of points, but I don't think it's material to your success. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, exactly right. It's interesting how not many of the textbooks actually use the terminology branch office manager, but
Yeah,
the test does.
used
And
to
it
be.
really comes down to advertising, does it not?
I think so. Paula,
Yeah.
I'm dating myself, but it used to be called a Series 8
Oh
branch
boy.
office manager. And if you failed a component, then you would be taking the 9 or 10. It was one test. And they separated it into 2 and called it a 9 and a 10. So yeah, the branch office manager was back in the New York Stock Exchange days.
Right.
Not so much anymore, but like I say, a couple points there. Couple
Yeah.
points. Well, yeah, it is true. You can get certified. Debt and bankruptcy are not reasons for statutory disqualification. I don't like the word certified. It's called a registration. So let's put it in proper nomenclature terminology. Can you be registered? Can you become an associated person of a broker dealer, take a Series 7 and be registered? The answer is yes. Debt is not anything that's a reason to have a problem. You don't have to disclose debt on your U4. You do have to disclose bankruptcy. I've seen administrators in SEC deny registration, not because of statute. Statutory disqualification is conviction of a felony within the last 10 years, a misdemeanor involving embezzlement of monies and securities. And have you ever been denied, suspended, or revoked registration in the past? Those are reasons for statutory disqualification, meaning they can disqualify you by statute and give you no explanation. I joke, like growing up, mom sometimes would say, I'm not even going to tell you what you did and why it's wrong. You figure it out. Here, they don't give you any explanation. Any other yes answer would be a reason to disqualify you. They'd have to tell you why. So what they're interested in bankruptcy, or when you check that box, yes, do your creditors think you abuse the bankruptcy process? And I've had both. I've had persons who were filed bankruptcy, disclosed it, and were able to get registered. And I've had people check the box, yes, disclose it, and were denied registration. But the answer is bankruptcy is not a reason for statutory disqualification. By the way, the 3 reasons I gave you are very testable. Brian, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely right. If you check yes on any, and bankruptcy is one of those questions, it can be reason for denial. It is not a statutory disqualification.
Yeah.
Exactly what you just said. Yep.
Yeah, one more thing I would add to that. So this is not a test term, but if you have a yes answer industry term, that's called a dirty U4. In our industry, somebody has a yes answer, it's a dirty U4. If you have answer everything no, that's called a clean U4. Again, not a test term, just an industry term. I think of it this way, Brian. Some yes answers are dirtier than other yes answers, right? So, John, for Series 7, how many practice exams should I take? Well, I think I would reverse engineer that. I have this conversation every day, John.
Yeah.
7 to 10 days out. As somebody who's working with you, let's say I'm your corporate trainer, or we're tutoring, whatever we're doing. I say, okay, John, 7, 10 days out, how many marks are we going to get? How many practice tests are we going to do? How much intellectual inventory are we to do? You should never do more than one practice exam a day. This aggravates me to no end when I tell people that. And then they'll call me and say, I did 2. I said, I thought we are going to do 1. We're going to do remediation. You're not trying to be like some mouse in a maze and you get some cheese if you get to X number of practice tests. The idea is, as we've said before, to do a practice test, find your areas, your weak areas, performance tracker, whether it's STC, Notman has one. I think Kaplan has the best version of this. Remediate, and then go take another one. So let's say every other day, 7, 10 days out. I would think 4 or 5 or 7, 10 days out. What do you think? Is that about right, Brian? I think everybody's different.
Right. Yeah, exactly. From different vendors, yes. I mean, that's why Dean has a couple of practice finals. I have a practice final. Kaplan has a ton of them, STC. But there's no magic number. Dean's exactly right. They're used simply to evaluate where are you in the process and what are your weak areas.
John,
because again, that is the key to it. You want to find the weak areas and bolster those up, right? So essentially, practice final one day, remediation the next day. Practice final the next day, remediation the next day. You do that 10 days out, there you go. 3 to 5, 4 to 6.
Yeah, there's some people out there that give very bad advice.
Yeah.
Brian and I both know they're old-time branch manager types who say to people, oh, just do a gazillion practice exams. No. We're trying to do intellectual inventories. Now, I will link, John, in the video description either tonight or tomorrow. I feel very fortunate that Brian has given permission for me to put his practice test on the channel. You can hit pause, play. Listen, don't call me if you don't like a Brian question. Call Brian, send him an email. Knopman's given me permission to put a couple of theirs up there. STC's given me permission. Kaplan's given me permission. So, John, I probably have, probably a dozen different practice exams. Somewhere you can just watch me do it. You hit pause, come up with your answer, hit play. You can watch me and a student do it together. So lots of practice. That's the same for all the series, by the way. I know every series I have a playlist of just practice tests from different vendors. Now, be careful because you don't want to get so many voices in your head that you start, getting clouded about things. But you're looking for confirmation. I'd also say whether you buy Kaplan QBank or any other vendor, STC supplements, if you do something from another vendor, your scores on that first part will drop because you adjust to phraseology, things like that. Now, sometimes I told you, John, I got people complaining about Brian's phraseology. And I go, well, I hate to tell you, but that's more accurate reflection of the kind of phraseology you're going to see than some of those test prep vendors that we've discussed. Purchase a cap, and there you go, 9 and 10. Is that the same thing as the key bank? The QBank. It's not a key bank, QBank, question bank. Or is it a Cuban, or is the Cuban something different? And only for, no. We've been discussing a QBank. So with your 9 or 10 from Kaplan, that comes with, if you go to your study tools, Paula, you'll see a QBank question bank. And I'm more than willing to help you, Paula. Anybody using Kaplan, I will help you with any question from any vendor. And you can send your question to explication request at guruexamprep.com. If it's some other vendor than Kaplan, you need to screenshot it because I don't have access backstage. Paula, if you're doing Kaplan, you can send me the QID. You don't have to cut and paste anything. I can actually just bring that up and I can see what you're looking at. I can help you out. Please note, if you send me a QID request, Paula, tell me it's Series 9 in the heading. Because I get somebody who send me, I'll probably remember, Paula, you're taking 9 or 10 because that's kind of a unique kind of an exam. But I'll get indiscriminate people sending me a QID number. Don't tell me what exam they're taking. They don't tell me if it's from Kaplan or STC. Then it's kind of hard to be helpful. Just a 71. Oh, King Cool Cat. I'm with you. Well, I King Cold Cat, while the hurt is fresh. I remember in my video description, I'm going to link to my 5 recommendations about what to do when you suffer this misfortune. I'll tell you right now what I want you to do while the hurt is fresh. I want you to go get the FINRA content outline for Series 7. While the hurt is fresh, and I want you to go through that content outline. It's a PDF on the FINRA website. And what I want you to do is intellectual inventory with yourself. I want you to go through each of those items and put a plus, 0, or minus. Counterintuitive, but we're looking for minuses. Things you were below par on that we can do next time, right? Plus means you think you're okay. We got to keep that where that's at. 0 means you're at par, passing. Par in this case is passing. So that you then put it away. Make notes while the hurt is fresh, questions you may have encountered, all that stuff. And by the way, that FINRA content outline can jot your memory. Hopefully you don't have PTSD, but it'll jot it and you can make your notes. And I put it away. I'd give yourself 3-4 days to refresh and reset. I also, in that podcast episode, tell you how you should respond to your sponsoring broker dealer. Now, sometimes people tell me what they're going to say to their broker dealer. I go, no, that's not what you should say. You want to have an attitude. I'm going to get it next time. Okay, so I'm going to link to that for you. I've told you what the first step is, and I'll link to that podcast. You can find it on the channel with the channel search bar. Just put fail and that video podcast episode come up. Brian, your recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. And that content outline, of course, is tied to your score sheet that you received.
Right on.
And unfortunately, I don't know what dingbat at FINRA decided this was a good idea when they said above minimum, below,
You have to give
just
a rate.
about right. You're just, instead of giving you actual scores.
Yeah.
But typically it's area 3. Those are the products. There's 72 questions in that area, right?
Yeah.
So look at your score sheet, find out which area is adequate, below adequate, or however they describe it.
Brian brings up a
Use
great
that with the content outline, right?
great point. Cool, King Cold Cat. Love that. The other thing that Brian brought up that's so important is it matches perfectly your score sheet. The score sheet you got, you only get a score sheet if you miss the mark. So not good to get a score sheet, but that will match up perfectly with that FINRA content outline. Studying and curious on the offerings is on the Series 7. Well, first, let me thank you for joining us from LinkedIn. We broadcast to LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Our preferred platform is YouTube, but I always warms my heart when I see somebody joining us from Facebook or LinkedIn. How much on offerings on the Series 7? Well, I think quite a few potential questions. You should definitely know about 33 and the cooling off period being 20 days. What we can and can't do during the cooling off period, that we can send you a preliminary prospectus, also known as a red herring, that does not have a final offering price. We can use it to accept indications of interest, which are non-binding on all parties. And we can place a tombstone. And then I would know the effective date. I would definitely know that in any offering, the SEC neither approves nor disapproves of any securities offering. They neither pass upon the adequacy and the accuracy of the information contained herein. Any claim to the contrary is a criminal offense. I would know exempt transactions are safe harbors. I know Reg A. We can raise up to $75 million. I know Rule 147 that we can another exempt transaction safe harbor as long as the issuer has 80% of their assets within the state. We can only sell it to residents of the state. They can sell it 6 months later to someone else. I would definitely know about Reg D, private placements as exempt transactions. Or that you must know the definition of an accredited investor, and you must know the distinction between 506, 5B, and 506C. 506B, up to 35 non-accredited, can't solicit. C, no non-accredited investors, but you can solicit. I know institutional investors can buy unregistered foreign and domestic securities of their QIBs, qualified institutional buyer securities. Christopher, you won't get all of those, but you'll get some of those. Did I miss anything there, Brian?
Oh, wow. That was pretty good. I think you may have taught this once or twice.
Maybe. Right. I'm just thinking, I don't think I missed anything there. Yeah. We'll see when how many minutes I took up there. So the answer is, in case now we're just reframe, yes. That's testable. It's very testable. 33 is about paper and prospectuses, new issues. And then 34 is about people and places. Hey, Isaac, what's up, my friend? Good to see you. Good to see you. Isaac's one of our regulars. TJ Stearns in a brief. Now, TJ, you got a legendary name. I don't know if you're any relation to the founders of Bear Stearns. That would be pretty cool. In a brief explanation, would you be able to explain the differences between Treasury securities, corporates, and municipal? Well, you're held accountable for all of those three issuers. So, Treasury securities are exempt securities. You're not going to get many questions on Treasury securities, but I would definitely know T-bills, T-notes, T-bonds. I know they trade in 30 seconds. I know T-bills are issued at a discount. I would know that you're going to pay taxes federally, but not state. Corporate issuers, you need to be able to distinguish between secured and unsecured bonds, right? By the way, I'm assuming you mean bonds here because in the corporate category, remember, there's equity securities and there's debt securities. And I'm assuming here you're talking about Treasury securities, always debt. That's all the Treasury issues. Municipal's just debt. So corporate, make sure you can distinguish between unsecured and secured bonds. And that's the difference in the issuers, right? The U.S. Treasury, you have no credit risk. You do have credit risk in a corporate bond, so you need to know what's the credit rating. Muni, same thing. You need to make a sheet of paper, TJ, and on one side, write all the terms associated with GO bonds. On the other side, all the terms associated with revenue bonds. Because a big part of that category is distinguishing between GOs and revenues. They love to say all the following are true of GOs except, or all following are true of revenues except. The big difference between GO is taxes is what backs a GO, requires voter approval. Revenue municipal securities are user fees and do not require voter approval. But I'll leave it to you to do that. Of those three you've asked about, you get way more questions on municipals. Maybe 20 questions you could get on municipals. Treasuries, I think 3, 4, 5, maybe. Corporate, couple. But the munis is it. And what cannot do? Well, TJ, this is a live stream. This is not a cram course. So you have a question that is beyond the scope of a live stream. That's called the code of conduct. So the code of conduct, TJ, is the ethical behavior that associated persons and broker-dealers owe customers, right? And unethical business practice is very testable. I'll leave it to you to make sure you know these. You shouldn't sell dividends. You shouldn't make breakpoint sales. You shouldn't churn, right? You shouldn't sell securities or investments not sponsored by your broker-dealer without permission. That's called selling away. So there's lots of questions about the code of conduct and what you can't do. I would focus on your test, TJ, on what you can't do, not what you can do as a broker, as a associate person, what you can't. I don't know, Brian, that's kind of a vague, broad question, so it's hard to be helpful. You got anything you want to add to
that? My first instinct was, remember, bonds essentially are all alike as far as their characteristics, right? Yeah. They're all debt instruments. They all borrow money. They pay an interest rate. They're sensitive to interest rate fluctuation, price fluctuations. They all have a basic structure to them, the coupon rate and the par value. The price will then determine, as well as the income, determines the investor's return on investment, called yield. So they all have kind of a basic structure. But after that, it depends on the issuer, U.S. government versus the state of North Dakota versus XYZ Corp.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, the main risk, TJ, are credit risk and interest rate risk. And you don't have credit risk in treasuries. Munis are considered the second safest form of credit, and corporates, and then interest rates going up and down in that relationship. And here we go with that, right? So Derek says, can you go over the pricing of long-term and short-term bonds and the long and low method? The answer is yes. So in pricing of bonds, if anybody ever asks you about economics, finance, or investments, and you want to sound smart, you should say it has a lot to do with interest rates. If you just shut up, you sound good. They say, what about them? You say they fluctuate. They go up and they go down. Test point number 1. Interest rates and bond prices have an inverse relationship. If interest rates go up, bond prices are going down. It makes sense, right? If I'm sitting on a 6% bond, brand new ones pay 10, my 6% bond isn't as valuable. Somebody's going to pay me less for it, a discount. So there's 2 things that are important, what's called the teeter-totter or seesaw. Now, you asked about long and low, and the long and low method, Derek, is to answer questions about volatility. Bonds with longer maturities and low coupons are more volatile. So you should expect on your exam to get asked about, which of the following bonds in the answer set is the most volatile. And so what Brian and I say is you shop the answer set, you go to the longest maturity. And so maybe you got 2 that are 20 and the other are 10. You go 20. Then you go to the lowest coupon. And for both of you, Derek and TJ, you need to know what the coupon is in terms of a bond. It doesn't change. So that's what long and low is used to answer. Is questions about volatility, or the fancy word for that on 65, 66 is question about durations. Brian, I turned it over to you with your board there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. These are questions that refer to bond price volatility, right? Oftentimes, it sounds like a suitability question, whether it's Series 7, Series 65, Series 66. They're all on the test. Interest rate risk. The answer set, as Dean just mentioned, if you notice, if the bonds all have different maturity dates, the one that has the longest maturity date will fluctuate the most, or in other words, is most volatile. If you look at the answer set and they all have the same maturity date, then you simply choose the one that has the lowest coupon rate, right? So again, if the answers have different maturity, it's the long-term bond that's more volatile. If they have all the same maturity, then it's the bond with the lowest coupon, such as, that's why the zero coupon bond, because it's 0, is most volatile. So they are test questions, testable concepts in 7, 65, 66.
Right on all the exams.
Yep.
65 until saving 65 math until last. You should definitely be able to do tax-free equivalent yield on 65. You should definitely be able to do current yield. Conversion price, no, it's the conversion ratio, and that's low probability. But yeah, you should be able to take the conversion price and be able to do it. I would add to your list, Jeff, total return. I'd be prepared to do total
Exactly
return.
what I was thinking. Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking? Anything?
Yeah.
By the way, the other ones, Jeff, where I think people get hung up on both 65 and 66 in categories called analytical methods, is on the ones like discount cash flow and present value, internal rate of return, all that other stuff. It's mainly inputs. It's not can you actually do it. So I would add total return, and then I would be prepared to know the classical balance sheet equation, Jeff. The classical balance sheet equation, that's math I'd know. I would know working capital. So I know a couple balance sheet calculations, current ratio, acid test ratio, debt to total cap. And then I think the highest probability, and Brian looks like he agrees with me, is total return. So Brian, is that kind of what your thought is?
That's exactly right. Now, again, I answer this question every single day, 14 times a day. When it comes to the Series 65, you're going to use a calculator no more than 5 times. The textbooks, I know, the practice questions make it feel like there is a ton of math with a ton of math formulas that are fairly complicated. On the real test, that is not the case. You will not use a calculator more than 5 times. You will not pass nor fail because of math.
That's right. And people go down the weeds and it kills them, right? Because you spend all kinds of time you could be spending on other things.
I blame the textbooks for that.
I do too. And then Brian and I also agree, Jeff. One more point we would add to this is, surprisingly enough, we don't think a lot of times, people overestimate the math to the stuff that they should be able to get, like, disclosures and unethical business practices and those other areas. So there's a lot more target-rich environments, I guess is what I would say, versus the math.
Absolutely.
13 days away, got a 51. Oh my goodness. Well, 51, I would say you just got to pretend you never took the damn thing. That's a knowledge deficit problem. That means you didn't know what questions you were being asked. You didn't know what answers were being offered to you. I don't know how many hours you did before. Let's just start over, right? You took my boot camp course. I don't know what you're talking about. Boy camp course. This is, I don't know if there's a language problem here. I don't teach anything called boy camp. I teach 3-day. By the way, we don't know what series you're talking about. So that would be helpful. There's a lot of things here. Let me just comment based on this, what I'm reading. You should pretend you never took it and start over. It's a tabula rasa, blank slate. If that's what we're going to do, then I think you should have a test date and then reverse engineer your study plan. I think, 3-4 weeks, anywhere from 60 to 100 hours. I do your first week and then, build in a fudge factor and either accelerate or decelerate depending on how much you can get done. So that would be my advice. I'm a little suspicious of your comment here because it's just weird. You're 13 away, you got a 51, so that's really bad. So whatever you were doing last time, it was totally not up to the task at hand. So that then leads to this: how many hours you're studying. We don't know what exam you're taking, and I don't know what the heck a boy camp course is. It helped a bit. I'm not even sure. Listen, if you took a course from me, you would by osmosis get higher than 51%. So I don't know what to say to you, except I don't think you were in one of my courses. I don't think you were on Brian's courses. Brian, do you thinking out with you 3 days, you'd get somebody by osmosis past 51?
They should, yeah.
Yeah. So now listen, maybe English is a second language. That could be a real challenge. And that, maybe I'm missing something. Go ahead and put that back in the chat. Tell us what series. Tell me what course you took with me or Brian. I don't know.
And what material.
What's that?
And what material they're using.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, maybe I see people. This is not a time to try and get something for free. Using ChatGPT. I can't tell you, Brian, on AI, people are starting to use AI for their study efforts, and it's wrong. I can't tell you. I mean, AI told me, ChatGPT told me it's T+2. I go, because it's scraping the internet, and that's what it was for decades, and so it's got to take a while for the LLM, large language learning model, to get it right. When taking practice exams, how do I narrow down the chapter I need to review?
Good question.
Well, again, you need a performance tracker. If you're using the Kaplan performance tracker, it'll tell you exactly what unit is, where to find the book. I was using a Knopman, person using Knopman. Knopman has something very similar. It tells you exactly what unit, Michaela, to go back to, right? So in your performance tracker, that's how you find what chapter you need to review. We call that remediation, right? So you go get your score. In that score, look a little closer and you'll find the unit. It'll refer to the unit or subject area. I'm assuming it's, STC, Kaplan, almost all the vendors have what's called a performance tracker.
I will admit, sometimes it's a little difficult navigating around some of those platforms.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. You got to find that performance tracker.
And then, by the way, Michaela, feel free to call customer service and say, hey, I need some help. A lot of them have like an instructor hotline, and they're more than happy to try and point you in the right direction. Michaela, you're also welcome to join me for my weekly Q&A jam session. And, we can pull up a shared screen and look at it and find it and do it that way too. I think people get worried about taxation on this Series 7. You're not going to be having to do somebody's taxes. Should you have a general understanding of the tax consequences of investments? The answer is yes. So big picture, do you know what to qualify for a long-term gain? You got to be at risk for more than 12 months. Do you know that all options trading is short-term? Do you know that stock dividends are not taxable? You have to adjust your basis. The answer is yes, but I'd be interested in see Brian's comment on this. So Michaela, in taxation and suitability, I don't think you should think of those as separate subject areas. I think the way to attack those is through product knowledge. While you're doing your studying on products, know that muni bonds are federally tax exempt. When you're studying and you're doing dividends, to know a stock dividend. So I think I would try and learn it in the context of the investment vehicles both suitability on those investment vehicles and tax consequences of those investment vehicles, like variable annuities, for example. Your thoughts, Brian?
That's exactly right. We know, Dean, you and I talk about this all the time. Your product knowledge takes you so far on Series 7, especially with suitability and taxation, knowing those products. But I will also tell you that I think I have a really good tax primer video on my YouTube channel. It's listed under Series 7, but anyone, Series 65, 66, can also use it as well. It's a very basic primer. It does then eventually go into some Series 7 specific tax questions, but it's a very basic. I think everybody should look at it.
Okay, so if you're new joining us, every Tuesday we're here at 5 p.m. Arizona time. And when something like this comes up in the video description, we will link to Brian's video. So any video Brian and I discuss, whether it's his or mine, if you circle back, sometimes tonight, I may not do it tonight, but give me 24 hours. And when you go to the video description, you will find the links that we've referred to. Like if you failed, is it over? Brian's thing on taxation. I have one I'll link to called Death and Taxes. No, just taxes. And, that's one as well. So I'll link to both those. And so circle back. I don't know what Brian feels about his taxation video. I think mine's adequate. I would say, Michaela, if you tell me you've missed because of suitability, I totally believe you. I mean, I have an entire playlist on suitability. But if you told me you missed the mark because of taxation, I don't think that's going to be material to your success. 69 on 1223 for the 66. 57 laws and regs. I know it makes you feel better, Brian. I see that all the time. The key chapters you should go over on your second attempt, Joseph, and then I'll do for Brian. I think disclosures and unethical business practices is 25 of those questions. So that's where I would refer to you to, is laws and regs. I wish we didn't call it regs. I wish we called it, instead of regulations, registration. How do we register broker dealers? How do we register securities? How do we register investment advisors? That kind of thing. Now, in that category, the biggest one to worry about is how do we register investment advisor reps, right? So I don't know if it makes you feel any better. Are there any supplements? Are you going to offer the cheat sheet again, Brian? I saw you start to write it up there.
Why not?
Okay, so Brian has a great, what he calls a cheat sheet. I don't like Joseph. He calls it a cheat sheet because I'm afraid somebody's going to take it down the exam and leave it there, and then they're going to find Brian's cheat sheet. But he's been very gracious to offer our viewers. If you're watching this on replay, please don't send an email to me. Send an email to Brian, and I don't know. I'll say the offer sunsets at some point. So maybe 10 years from now, you send Brian an email. No. He's going to say, sorry, that offer is expired. But there's Brian's email. I use this, Joseph, when I'm tutoring. I use it to in the sheet say, okay, here we are, or here's this. It's very helpful. So send Brian an email and tell him you're accepting his cheat sheet offer. And like I say, that's a great offer for Brian to make you. If you buy his stuff, it comes free. Well, I shouldn't say free. In the context of that, he has a whole PDF that's pretty damn good too.
Yeah, in the context of Series 65 and 66, if laws and regs is your lowest area, the first thing we have to ensure is that you have federal IA, state IA, federal IAR, state IAR, broker-dealer, and agent. We got that down. Once you get that down, then we can move on to some of the other things in laws and regs. But that's the first thing you got to make sure that you're good at.
Yeah. So there you go. So boom. Certainly take Brian up on that. Take him up on that. It's definitely a good offer to accept. For the 7, you're never going to see the word Mayhammer. No, John. Mayhammer is an achievable mnemonic about what is it, accrued interest or some stupid thing? No. Mayhammer, if you go to the Achievable website, John, I'm not an Achievable fan. I'm not part of the cult of Achievable. But if you go to there, they have a sample dump sheet, and that's where that Mayhammer comes up. There are very few things that Ken Fennan and I agree on. One thing we agree on is that we think this thing is, well, I apologize, Ken. Maybe you don't think this. So I'll just speak for myself. I don't think it's worth putting on a dump sheet.
It's the first time I've ever heard the word.
There you go. Well, Brian hasn't heard of it. That's right. Testing tomorrow. Oh my God, Joy, what are you doing here? Go get some rest. Go get some rest, right? So the most important thing, particularly on NASA exams, Joy, is that your reading skills are in top form tomorrow. That you are able to RTFQ, read that full question, read that full answer set, and know what you're being asked, know what your answer is. So the most important thing tonight, Joy, is get some rest. You want to be confident in the execution of your study plan up until this moment in time, confident in yourself, and most importantly, Joy, be confident in your answers tomorrow, right? Yeah, I would watch. Well, I think that's it, because I don't want to give you a whole list of videos, Joy. What I want you to do, 100% pass rate, Joy. I want you, when you leave us, to go into your bathroom tonight and tomorrow morning. I want you to look in the mirror, and I want you to say, Joy, in the mirror, I want you to say, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the greatest Series 66 test taker of them all? Joy, 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 hoorah! Brian, what do you have any comments for the night before?
Not after that.
So we don't know what your scores are. I'm working, Joy, on a 90-minute version. I've been updating my series exams in 60 minutes. And people have been asking me to update them and do them again. And I did, Joy, want to do 66 part 2. So what I've done instead is the mighty 90. I've got it already out on the SIE. I'm going to have the 7 one up shortly. And then I'll have a 66. And Joy, tonight the answer is no. But if you would ask me next week or a couple weeks from now, I'd say yes. I have the mighty 90 on 66. I have a question about exclusions, savings, loan, and foreign banks. I don't even think that's testable, Ryan. So I think you're in the weeds. We don't have savings institutions anymore because we had a savings and loan crisis, and all those savings and loans became banks or something else. So saving institutions would be when you watch It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. That's what a savings institution is. Do you think there's any testable content whatsoever, Ryan, Brian, in that?
No, not much anymore. No.
Yeah, and and as Brian and I say, we really on NASA exams, Ryan, we really do get ticked off on test prep vendors because they really take people in the weeds on those NASA exams unnecessarily. Well, on the investment vehicle part, Chris, there is some overlap. But we think a lot of people mess up on 65, 66 because they expect too much overlap. And there's some new stuff there. So treat each and every exam with respect. Don't get any hubris, right? So I think that teeter-totter seesaw thing, long and low, that's there for sure. So there's some overlap. But I wouldn't go into that thinking you're not going to have to study book cover to cover on that material. Your thoughts, Brian, on overlap?
Oh, I'll just say 25%.
Okay. I don't even like using
not enough to pass. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I don't even like the word because when people
I don't either. Yeah.
People get in trouble on the 65, 66 is because of the expectations of more overlap than they actually encounter. Any dump sheet for government agency securities? No dump sheet necessary, John. You need to know that Ginnie Mae test question, 3 test question about Ginnie Mae's. Ginnie Mae's pay interest and principal monthly. Ginnie Mae's are fully taxable. Ginnie Mae, unlike the other agencies, have the full faith and credit of the United States Treasury. Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae have an implied backing. Direct backing is way more important. So there is no dump sheet necessary for government agency securities, right? You need to know Ginnie Mae's pay interest and interest and principal monthly because it's a pass-through of the mortgages in the portfolio, right? Fully taxable. Full faith and credit of the United States Treasury. You should expect all the following are true of Ginnie Mae's except the other government agencies are Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. I think they'll be used as distractors in the answer set in comparison to a Ginnie Mae. So do you think there's a dump sheet necessary for agency securities?
No.
Governments as in a whole, John, are not as testable as other things. If, John, I'm your supervisor, 910, we had Laura in the house, right? I'm the branch office manager. And you come to me and say you want to sell government securities and government agencies, I'm going to say, John, find another job. That's not what we do here. They don't need us to go buy treasury bills and T-notes and T-bonds. They can do that, 1-800 US Treasury Direct. Our hearts are in the right spot. We want you to do better than that. We want you to risk your capital, get higher returns. And so, besides safety of principle on the test, there's very few questions on treasuries and agencies. If you tell me you missed your mark on Series 7 because of treasuries and agencies, I'm saying, If you tell me you missed because you didn't know options, okay. That could cause you. You didn't know munis, that'll do it. You didn't know what a mutual fund is? Oh, there we go. Those are the big ones, right? All right, you're using Kaplan. So send me the Kaplan QID. You took it back in September or Society. Again, Vane, I don't know if it's English as a second language. I don't know I'm not understanding what you're asking, right? So I took it in September or Society. Oh, no, October. Okay. It was with me. Okay. So in October, I taught the SIE, Vane, and you got a 51% on the SIE. Well, then I owe you an apology because I should have done much better than that. Right. I do the SIE in October. So I'm assuming it was an SIE. Is that correct? Because if it wasn't an SIE, then it wasn't me. And it was me and it was October and it was an SIE and you got 51%. I owe you an apology because I would expect just hanging out with me for 3 days. I would have done better for you than that. Series 4, woohoo! Which question bank do you recommend? Is it harder than 9 or 10? Well, it gets in a little more in the weeds, but again, Juan, same thing I commented on the 9. I think same thing on the 4. People overestimate how much strategy stuff they're going to get, like iron butterflies and that kind of thing. I do want to have a Series 4 playlist in the video description. I do have some replays of some tutoring sessions, things like that. Series 4 QBank, Kaplan has I don't know if Kaplan even offers the 4 anymore. It may not be available. But on the 4, maybe STC or Notman. I like Notman Marks. We've been blessed enough to have Brian Marks of Notman Marks contributing in some of our social media. I would check out Notman Marks and see about what their 4 offering is. Is it harder than 9 or 10? I don't think it's harder than the 10. I think it's harder than the 9 in a similar way to the 9 being difficult. Your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely right. We talk about this again all the time. It's not so much about the different strategies. It's about supervision of the strategies.
Well, again, Vane, so here we go. So you didn't do a 3-day Series 7 with me at Kaplan, right? If you did it in October or you did it in September, it wasn't me because I did not teach a Series 7 for Kaplan in either month. So I don't know who it was, but it wasn't me. I didn't teach a Series 7 in either of those months. So, but oh well. Again, I still would tell you I owe you an apology because you should have done better. Now, remember, it's always on you. So now we ask, what was your QBank usage? How many hours after class? Coming to class is not going to be sufficient. Marcel, it's snowing in Kenner, Louisiana. Wow, 28 degrees. It's been really cold here. So reach out tomorrow, Thursday. There you go. I'll be looking for it, Marcel. I'll be looking for it. Can you please explain what we need to know about the investment policy statement for the 66? If you go and add them into my channel search bar and you put investment policy statement, there'll be a video come up where I talk about it. As a fiduciary, it's not required under ERISA. So that's one thing we know. It's not required. But as a fiduciary, it informs us and reduces our liability if we have one. Some firms actually do this for even retail clients. That's right. Like, hey, Brian, can you tell me about what you're comfortable with, what you're not going to comfortable with? And so this can guide me in selecting investments. Or is there any kind of investment you don't want in there? What would you add to that, Brian? Would you add anything to that?
There is a page in Kaplan's textbook on what the investment policy statement contains. There's almost always a question that says all the following except can be found in the investment in the
the one I got on debrief, Adam, it's similar to Brian, what sounds like what you're hearing was, does it have a list of particular securities? No.
Right.
It doesn't have a list of particular securities, right? It says in broad scope what we are going to be doing.
Right.
Oh man, that hurts, Van. That hurts. Jeez. Ugh. But I like your attitude. That's exactly right. You went into the cave to slay that dragon. You got a good look at the dragon. You know what he looks like. He knows what you look like. Next time you go into that cave, you're going to slay that Series 7 dragon. I have no doubt. Second try, updated 7 to 60 minutes. I haven't got it yet, Joy. Thank you for joining us from Facebook. We always love seeing people joining us from Facebook and LinkedIn. Second try, I have not updated it, but it's still good. Still good. Gets lots of people. I would recommend that one. Another one that's very popular for people as they come down the home stretch is my Series 7 tips, tricks, and memory aids. Tips, tricks, and memory aids. And I'll link that in the video description as well. You can find it in the channel search bar, but I'll link it in the video description. It looks like, Brian, oh my God, we're running over. Oh my goodness. How did we do that? Having so much fun. So much fun. I like it. Should do okay, Joy. I like that. Okay, we got it. Okay, so let me go find our giveaway tool. What you win is access on my booking page to any of the classes you find there that are normally only available to my paid students. So you don't win tutoring at a date and time of your choosing. So sometimes people get confused about what they actually win. And what they win is that I like it snow. So let me put that into our search bar here. Boom. You got to put it in if you want to participate into the chat exactly as how Brian has it on there. And we'll be collecting that. Let me go now find this to share. Share screen. Boom. And there we go. Woo. And let me move the whole screen. And let me get Marcel. Marcel's such a winner, man. If he wins again, I mean, he's Brian, when he comes to visit in Vegas, man, we got to have him blow on the dice, And I told you about the Bumblebee. The Bumblebee is operational. So I'm going to come see in the Bumblebee. I think I got Mom to where I think I can. We're going to try it a night on our own here off grid with my brother 100 feet away and see how it goes.
Do you remember our maitre d' at Hawthorne, Terry?
Yeah, love that guy.
Yeah, Stacy and I were talking to him this past weekend.
Do you have any stories for us about Frank Sinatra?
No, it was about William Boyd, who's another kind of classic Las Vegas.
The Boyd Gaming?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
The man is a gem. I'm telling you, he's an absolute
I haven't worn a tie in years. But the Marine in me who likes decorum and bearing, the maitre d' at this place Brian and I sometimes frequent knows how to make a perfect tie and perfect length, and just one of those old classy guys. And he's told us some stories of the old Rat Pack that he's actually personally met and talked to. All right, here we go with a drawing. Boom. I think we should tell Marcel that he can't enter. Paula, there you go. So, that's right. Now, Paula, I tell you what, for you, because I know you're taking your 9, send me an email, dean@guruexamprep.com, and I'm more than happy to maybe try and do something with us on a coaching call for the 9 for 30 minutes, rather than having you do something that wouldn't be appropriate for the 9. So send me an email, dean@guruexamprep.com, Paula, Series 9, and we'll try and get a little 30-minute coaching call together for you. That's what you win. So sometimes I depart from our normal win and customize it for the winner. All right. So I always say inch by inch, your Series 7 or 6 or whatever your exam, your FINRA NASAA exam's a cinch. Inch by inch, your exam's a cinch. Yard by yard, your exam is hard. You say, Brian?
You got to learn to keep it simple. Stay with what you know. You take the test. Don't let the test take you.
I do, Dave. I'm working on it. I plan on uploading 3 and not 79. I just haven't had a chance to do it. So the answer is yes. All right, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday, 5 p.m. I'll see some of you tomorrow night for our monthly book club meeting, She-Wolves. I'll see some of you tomorrow for our weekly Q&A jam session. Those are things we do. The book club we do monthly. The jam we do every week. All right. See you then, guys and gals. Bye-bye.